I just discovered something. It's not, maybe other people have already discovered it, but it's new to me and I thought I'd share. I have a real hard time getting these pins into its quarter-inch pins and quarter-inch holes. And the way around that difficulty was for me to drill 10 thousandths over, which always on the outside of the handle, you could see this adhesive epoxy ring around the pin. There's no avoiding that. Either that or you got to hammer the pins in. So I figured out what I did was polish the pins on my buffing wheel, polish them really good, and it takes a microscopic layer of the brass off. And then, see, what I do is I epoxy my pins and then I put them in the holes, and then I epoxy this, and then I lay my knife down over it, and then I pick my other half up, and I epoxy the inside, and I put epoxy in these holes. And now what I'm doing is I'm chamfering these holes. They're going to be filled with epoxy. And then the pins can find the holes a little easier. Because here's the problem. I'm up against the clock. As soon as I put these two parts in here and mix it up, I've got like 3, 4, 5 minutes tops to get this together and clamped. That's the drawback of using 5-minute epoxy. Someday I will go to 8 or 12-hour epoxy, but right now this is what I'm using. The other stuff is way more expensive, and I'm trying to keep my costs down. So as long as I don't make any mistakes, this is just fine. And the bottom line is if I make a mistake, I take my saw and I cut the pins off, I sand it back down to the bare metal, and I start all over. So I just thought I'd share that. I'm chamfering the holes on the inside, and I'm polishing the heck out of the pins, and they do go in smoother. Okay, I'm fixing to put these handles on. Okay, we are glued up. Everything went well. Now, I'm going to work on this catto. I hope by Sunday to have this ready for heat treating and tempering. And Sunday for my noon Central Time live stream, I'm going to heat treat this. And then when I'm done heat treating it, I will come and put it in my tempering oven. And while it's tempering, we will be working on the handles. And I'm going to pick out a bunch of wood, and I'm going to let people in the live stream pick the wood that they would like to see on this knife. Okay, let me get to sanding on this. Actually, I'm going to pet my dog, drink a little dew, and then I'm going to get to sanding. Here's another little thing that I've learned, and I'm passing it on to you if you're a knife maker. Maybe you already know this. But I have a divot. See, I've sanded out all the grind lines. Let me see if turning this off will help. Yeah, a little bit. I've sanded all the grind lines out, except I have a divot. You can see it right here. Right here. And what that is if you start on your belt and you hesitate for just a second, you can get a divot. Or if you deviate from one amount of pressure against the belt, if you alter the pressure, if you don't have the exact same amount of pressure all the way across your bevel, you can give yourself a divot like that. Now, I didn't see this divot while I was actually on the belt grinder. I didn't see it till I started sanding. And I could go back to the belt grinder and try to sand that divot out on the belt grinder, but I stand just as much of a chance of fixing it as I do screwing it up. So I'm going to continue hand sanding it since I've got the blade this far. I won't be saving any time by going back to the belt grinder, and I run the risk of making it even worse. And believe me, I've done it. So I'm going to go ahead. It's going to take a lot of hand sanding, a lot of effort, but I'm going to sand that divot out of there. I have done it before. It's just time consuming and sandpaper consuming. So I just wanted to let you know. I'm a beginning knife maker. I'm still a beginning knife maker. I'm still mastering techniques, improving techniques. And that's one of them I need to improve on, maintaining the exact same amount of pressure all the way across the bevel as I'm grinding. So, there you go. Okay. It's gone. That was a lot of rubbing. I said you had to be careful. You have to use the exact same pressure all the way across. But on the other hand, if you do have a divot like that, you have to alternate pressure. If you don't want to bring this bevel down, you would start with a heavy pressure here, and then as soon as you got past the divot, you would lighten up. I mean, there's methods of alternating, of varying rather, the amount of pressure you use and the length of time you keep your belt in an area. Like that divot that was there, what I would do if I was to put this back on the belt grinder is use my 120, and I would press hard, from the plunge line here. I would press hard from there to just past the divot, and then blend it in lightly this way. So if you do mess up, you can correct it by using just the opposite of what got you into trouble making the divot. Or not using the opposite, but using the same thing by alternating or varying the pressure and the length of time you spend in one area. Now, if you do it accidentally, like I did, you end up with a divot. And you can correct it. I've done it before. And the bottom line is, on a thick blade like this, if you just, if it's just screwed up, go all the way to the top with a full grind, That's a whole lot more hand sanding, but it's worth it to not have to, throw the blade away. All right, here's what it looked like. Now this side come out perfect. I'm really happy with this side. And the other side wasn't bad, it just had that divot in it, which is now fixed. So I'm going to start sanding on this side, and then I'm going to turn it up this way, and I'm going to get this spine sanded up to 180, and then I'll move on to 220. My jacket is moving. All right, there is one side up to 220. Now, side number 2 up to 220. By the way, I do have that divot out of there. Actually, you can just barely see a little bit, but I'm able to sand it, so that's all I care about now, is that I'm able to sand it. So let me bring this up to 220. I may stop at 220. It's been a while, but a friend of mine gave me this huge saw blade, Redneck Prepper. And I have some things in my garage, or actually something that Bev cut her cutting board. She used an electric knife on her cutting board, and it messed it up pretty good. So I'm going to get my sander out and sand it back down for her. And while I've got my sander out, I'm going to sand the rust off of that there and hit it with some black spray paint to get it ready for, you see this up here? That's what I want, but I gotta find somebody who is capable of airbrushing some really nice letters on there. BC Blade, BC on top and Blades on the bottom. And I haven't found anybody locally here that's got a good hand at doing that. And I don't want to do it myself because, you know, that didn't come out that good with the letters that I have, the stencils. And there's no way I could do anything like that freehand. I'm just terrible freehand. So I may go do that after I get this up to 220. The sun is up high enough now where it's shining in the front of my garage door. So, you know, it'll warm it up in there some. Okay. You see these scratches going this way? I have some more down here that are going this way. This is why you alternate the directions that you sand with each grit of sandpaper. I sanded 180 this way to sand out all the grind lines. 180 this way. Now I'm at 220 and I'm going this way with it. And I can see where I have missed, or not missed, but still need to sand. There's some right there, right here. There's a bunch right here, even up here. So I still got a ways to go. And that's why you alternate the directions so you could see the previous lines. All right, I have sanded up to 320. And it's looking pretty good. That is 400. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. But I want to tell you one other thing that I have learned in the process of making knives. These are your plunge lines here. Here on either side. And if they're not even, you can fix them. Let's say that you have, let me turn these lights off. There we go. Let's say that one plunge line is further back, like back here, and they're not even. You can adjust the other one with a file, very carefully moving it back. I've done it, but I'm getting a lot better at making my plunge lines match up. There we go. And the way I do it is I adjust the tracking of my belt where I have more of a rounded plunge line instead of a 90-degree plunge line. You see how it's rounded? And the way I do that is I adjust the tracking of my belt to come past the backing face of that is behind the belt. That way when I push my blade up against the belt, it kind of rounds the edge of the belt and it gives it a softer edge. And so far, it's way more accurate. Okay, now I'm going to the shop, the other shop, the garage. There we go. Well, that's all I can do until I get, I don't know what I'm going to do. I may buy some letters. That's the thing. I can do that. I could buy some letters and stick them on there. I'll think about my options, but that's all I can do right now. I'm closing the shop. I'm going back to the knife shop, and I'm going to go back to sanding.